Hi, folks. Welcome back to This Week, where we're having real conversations with the people doing the work to rebuild California from the ground up. One community, one story at a time. Today, we're talking to Evelyn Sky Jones. Evelyn is a powerhouse in the conservative movement here in California. She was the volunteer engagement coordinator for the Trump political team in California, a national delegate for Trump in 2024, and even spoke at the Republican National Convention. On top of that, she served as a bundler for the Trump 47 committee, helping drive fundraising efforts in one of the toughest states for conservatives. She's someone who understands how to activate volunteers, raise money, and organize at the ground level, skills we need more than ever in a state like ours. Evelyn brings both strategy and energy to everything she does, and she's been a key player in building momentum for Republicans across California.
But that was a great intro. I love it.
You like the intro?
You're hired, right?
I'm hired. So Evelyn, I want to start from kind of your beginning. You're an immigrant like myself. You're from El Salvador.
Yes.
So tell me your journey to America.
I came here almost at 7.5 years old. And I was one of those kids left behind with the grandma.
Yeah.
I didn't meet my dad until I was like 18 years old. And my mom was left with me. So she decided to come to the United States. She got married, and I was blessed to be one of those kids that came in through the big doors because I had a green card as soon as I came to the United States.
Yeah.
So I came here legally. And I still remember when I got to San Diego, to the border.
Yeah.
And think about it. I have never met my mom. And I thought my grandma was my mother for many years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they say, "Oh, your mom's coming." And I'm like, "What? My mom?" Like, they don't really prepare the child. And then it was the journey to come from El Salvador. We drove because my stepfather was dying of cancer. So, we drove through all the different states of Mexico, and they didn't prepare me again to tell me that I was they just said, "You're going on a trip." They didn't say you're moving.
Yeah.
Okay. So when they take me in to take my green card, I look like to the side to make sure that they wouldn't leave me, because I'm like, I'm with practically strangers.
Yeah.
And I'm 7.5. So it was, I would say, traumatic experience. I remember driving through the mountain, La Rumorosa, they call it. And it was very, very, high. And I was like, I've never been this high in my life because, I didn't have a car.
That's in Mexico?
Yeah, I think it's like before getting to TJ. So I remember like getting a little scared of the height, and I fell asleep.
Wow.
Because I was scared.
That's what, that also the oxygen is much less. So you're probably like.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Well, that's such a fascinating story. And to have it so young, and it clearly left an impression on you because you remember it so vividly. I'm wondering, you said who is they? Were those your family members who were bringing you over, or?
Well, my mom.
Your mom, yeah.
My stepfather, which I am grateful that he was able to petition me properly, and I got a green card right away. I didn't know how blessed I was until years later.
Yeah.
And then my sister was 3 years old, almost 3 years old.
She came at the same time as you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Well, she was born in the United States, so she went with my mother and stepfather to pick me up. So.
Oh, so she was here already?
Yes.
Interesting. So they moved here, and then they brought you after the fact.
She moved here.
Yeah,
and
your
then,
mom.
And then met my stepfather.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And did you guys settle in California immediately or somewhere else?
She was already in California. So I was living with my grandma for almost 7.5 years. So we had a house in Montebello, and my 2 uncles live with my mom. So that was kind of like comforting because I grew up with my uncles. So as I got here to a new house, a new world, right?
Yeah.
I was able to see familiar faces. So I saw my uncle Jorge, my uncle Marcos, and I'm like, okay, I'm safe.
Home, yeah.
I'm safe because I know them.
Yeah.
So that helped.
Interesting. So I'm curious, with your background, typically most Americans, especially I would say like most like white Democrat Americans, would assume that you're a liberal, but you're very much the opposite.
No, I was never a liberal, I would say. My values were always conservative. It was about God. My grandma did give me a interesting upbringing, but I would always go to church.
Yeah.
And I always saw Jesus.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to please God.
Yeah.
Regardless of, other things that happen in our lives. In cultures like in Brazil, they believe a lot on spiritual stuff, and they go into, I would say, black magic and stuff like that. So my grandma didn't do black magic, but she did go to places that were not Christian. So as a little girl, I saw it, and it was like, wait a minute, you go like to a psychic or something, and then you go to church.
Yeah. It's a little contradictory.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. That's a conversation that I have even with some of my family members as well, because in Brazil, the way they describe it in Brazil, they call it cultural or religious syncretism, because all the cultures like mixed into the similar idea to the melting pot that they have here. All the cultures mixed together, and then you got this like amorphous culture. But you look back, I think anybody who is religious and dedicated to Christ, like you start reading the Bible and hearing Christ's teachings and what's in the Bible, and you start seeing, okay, that's straying away from God. So, it's very interesting that you had that discernment at such a young age, because most people, like sometimes they go their whole lives without developing that discernment. I'm wondering, so is faith the thing that ended up drawing you to conservative values?
Believe it or not, it was not faith. For me, it was more, in college, I was not really like into political stuff. I was more like into business. Helping out was always something that I enjoyed doing, like, fundraising for education, for scholarships. But in college, I was more like geared to business events, and I never went political. But it was until President Trump announced that he was running, and I loved to watch his Apprentice show.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be in The Apprentice.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was pregnant with my first child when it started. And I would stay up to just watch The Apprentice. And I would say, one day, I want to go into that show.
Yeah.
So it never happened. But when President Trump said he was running, I was 100% behind him. And my husband saying, oh, look, Donald Trump is going to run. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all for him, So me, it was more about his business sense, common sense.
Yeah.
You're fired if you don't do your work. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think the no nonsense thing is something that sold a lot of people on it. Because I think our government has gotten so bloated that people were just looking for somebody who's going to come in there and slash, which is, he's doing the same thing right now. But I feel like the first time he kind of wanted to have the aura of like kind of similar to what Obama had a little bit, to what most presidents have, which is like some level of reverence. Unfortunately, during his first term, Democrats just took it to such a degree. And even afterwards, like all the lawfare. But I feel like now that made him like bulletproof, because now he's in there and he really doesn't care. He's just doing what his agenda is, what he promised, word for word. And honestly, like I talk about this a lot. One of the things I'm hoping is that at some point he'll abolish the IRS. That's one.
Yes.
That's a big one. I think so. Describe to me then how you started getting involved with Trump and fundraising, because that's a big part of what you do, right? You do a lot of fundraising. That's how I found out about you at one of Tony's events. You were talking about all the fundraising you do, and hearing you talk about it is something that's actually very impressive, because you start hearing your journey and how you kind of just started like figuring things out along the way, and all of a sudden you're like raising $100,000 here, so like $50,000 there. for people who have never done something like that, it seems a little unreal. So if you could just describe to, how you got started and how that journey developed for you.
Well, like I mentioned, in college, I was involved in business clubs. And 1 year I was the corporate fundraising with another friend of mine. And we raised the most money for that organization that year.
Yeah.
And I think that I always gotten exciting about racing or building something from scratch. That's what I enjoy doing. So when President Trump came here in 2019, he came to Newport Beach, to Little Island. And most of the fundraisers were like $5,000. And I was like, I really want to go to a fundraiser, but $5,000 is a lot.
Yeah.
So when I saw the one that it was going to be on my birthday, it was October 19 of 2019. And I said, I'm going to the fundraiser. It's $2,800. But you know what? President Trump needs our support, and I'm going to do it. And that was like the first time that I ever donated to a campaign. So I went, and I started calling my friends. Hey, I'm going to go to the fundraiser. You want to go with me? One friend said yes. Then she invited another friend, and then another friend invited another person. So we had 4. And then she says, you should do fundraising. And I said, well, how do I do that? So I connected to somebody, and they said, we can give you like an ID. I'm like, great. So I sent it to another friend, and then she sent it to another friend. And then all of a sudden I got somebody that wanted to donate $50,000. And I was
That's
like,
amazing.
what? And then I got someone else that wanted to donate $50,000. And then I got, all of a sudden it was like $117,000 in just like few hours. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a blessing, right? So I went to Lido. I had a great time. At that time, I really didn't understand how it worked, but it was my gift to President Trump, and I enjoy the fundraiser, and it was my birthday. So I got my ID, and the next time around, I said, I want to start this earlier, because I was the last fundraiser that he had. So I contacted the campaign, and I let them know that I wanted to volunteer. They had a Zoom call, and they asked me in what capacity had I volunteer. And I said, well, I do a lot of fundraising, but I also have a lot of other volunteers. I know the people who do the job.
Yeah.
So as the campaign needed help with a project, they called me. So I came out on a video. Another friend of mine came out on the video, because I wanted to make sure that the people that were constantly working and volunteering for President Trump got a chance to be on those videos. Or like when the rally came, I got everyone to help at the rally. And just connecting. That I think that I'm very good at connecting. Sometimes the connections do go sour, but most of the time they're great connections. And what you have to learn about fundraising, that just envision a triangle. You connect one person, then you tell the next that person, please keep sending those invitations to those events. If you cannot attend, send it to 5 people or send it to 10. We need to help President Trump. He needs our support. And that's the way that, it works, the connecting.
A little triangle.
The triangle, right? You start making a whole bunch of connections, and all of a sudden you start getting a call. Oh, I hear you do fundraising, and I would like to attend an event. Great. What option would you like? Oh, I want a picture. Okay, it's $25,000. Yes, I want the picture. It was a campaign of love. People that wanted to take a picture with the Man of the Year.
Man of the Year. There you have it. She's got the magazine. She's got a bunch of other stuff she's going to show us in a bit too.
Yeah.
So that is so interesting. And so you kind of saw this snowball into this larger thing. And I mean, how are you like, I'm trying to understand, because like as somebody who's never done something like that, like I've never like called somebody up, I was like, hey, do you have $50,000 for this? It sounds a little like extraordinary,
Well, you have to I always try to meet people and talk to new people, because that's how the connections, I would say that a lot of people that donated are not people that you usually see at the party. Some of them, yes, but I did a lot of connecting in different settings. So like if I were to meet somebody and later on I would say, oh, I love your speech or your testimonial. And, it sounds like, you are a Republican, right? And they'll be like, yeah. So, hey, let's keep in touch, let's maybe grab coffee or something. And then when President Trump will come, then I will go to that person and say, hey, President Trump is coming to fundraiser. Let me know if you'd like to attend.
Yeah.
And then that person will be like, oh, wow, I can't attend, but my cousin would love to attend, or like a business owner. And then all of a sudden the invitation is there. And then somebody will say, I want to donate $100,000 or I want to donate $50,000.
That's so interesting. So basically maintain this Rolodex where you're maintaining contact with people and then it keeps expanding beyond.
Yes. But finding the people that love him.
Yeah.
Because, I couldn't fundraise the amount of money that I did for President Trump just for a candidate. Okay? Because President Trump is either loved or hated. Right? So the people that love him and they know what he was going to do and what he's doing, they were willing to donate the $1,000 or donating the $5,000.
Yeah.
And these are just like first-time donors, people that have never even attended an event. Like I have a grandpa and a grandma. They were like, Evelyn, we decided that we want to do it. Even if we put it on our credit card, but we want to go see President Trump.
That's amazing. And I'm thinking it's not like you're doing this in like a deep red state, right? You're doing this in California, arguably the hardest state for any Republican to run in, right? And you're getting these massive numbers. So what obstacles and challenges have you faced, as you're like navigating these treacherous waters full of Democrats? Would you say, I mean, clearly it's one of the hardest states to operate, but how would you, describe your experience?
With Democrats, I'm not afraid to talk to anyone. And I think the most important thing is, if they're moderate, you talk about the economy, you talk about crime.
Kitchen table issues.
Yeah, you mentioned, we're in Hollywood right now, and Hollywood has a homeless problem.
Yeah.
Criminals are out there. You talk about the issues that are pertinent to that area.
Yeah.
So if I would talk to a moderate, I would start with that. I would start with something that connects us, that I wouldn't start right away, oh, I'm a Trump supporter. You would start with the issues that are of concern to them. And then little by little, they're like, oh, tell me about yourself. I mean, one of the things is like you say, they always say, you are Hispanic and, why are you a Republican? So
what do you say?
Like I answer to you, I'm all about family. I'm all about, values, Christian values.
Yeah.
I'm all about the American dream. I mean, I grew up in a not very good area. I grew up close to here, Mid-City, Los Angeles. I went to Virgil Junior High, not the best school. That is where the MS-13 started.
Wow.
It was called Mala Salvatrucha. And I remember back in the day, I was like in 7th grade. And I remember kids saying, hey, I'm going to join the Mala Salvatrucha. And I'm like, what is that? And then they said, they would tell me that it was a Salvadorian gang. And one of the reasons they started the Mala Salvatrucha is because 18th Street was very prominent in this area right here.
Yeah.
So the 18th Street gangsters would want to beat up the kids that have come from Central America. And, maybe they wanted to take their lunch money. Maybe they wanted to bully them. Whatever they just wanted to maybe hurt them for fun. So this group of young men got together to protect themselves.
And then it blew out into this whole criminal organization.
Look at right now.
Yeah.
We're talking about MS-13 more than any other time in history.
Yeah. And I think they're labeled a terrorist organization now at this point.
Same as the cartels.
Yeah. So what does how do you say it? Mala
Salvatrucha.
Mala Salvatrucha.
Mala means bad.
Bad?
Salva, I think it was for Salvadorian, salva. And then trucha is like, like ghetto slang for a whole bunch of people. Mala Salvatrucha. And then it became MS-13.
So it's like bad El Salvadorians. Bad El Salvadorian gang.
Yeah.
Basically, 13. And 13, is it because like in Brazil, 13 is a bad luck number? People stay away from it?
That I don't know. I was never involved, with drugs or with gangs.
Yeah.
But I do remember there was a young boy, Victor. I still remember Victor. And he would call me because he was lonely. His parents were always working. I think his mom worked at a home and she would only get the weekends. So we became to talk, and I remember him saying, they want me to join the Mala Salvatrucha. Do you think I should do that? And I'm like, no, Victor, don't. I mean, I was a young girl, but I said to him, don't do it. That's not good for you. He was a nice boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Back then, we didn't have cell phones, so he would call me on the landline, and he was lonely. Like us, we're the parents.
Yeah.
And that's I think that when I was brought here at 7.5, it was easier for me to adapt to the environment than for a 13 or 15-year-old to be dumped into the high school environment.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, the older you get, it gets a little rough to adapt, especially if you're used to your maternal or paternal culture or whatever you consider it to be. It's also interesting because at that age group, it's like young men are really looking for purpose and looking, you have a lot of energy, you're getting pumped with all these hormones, and you're looking for something to make yourself, out of. And I think that, unfortunately, as Western society has moved away from faith, you can see an increasing number of of young men just moving, in that direction, because then you have the appeal of, and in Brazil it happens a lot, but you have the appeal of immediate, responsibility, right? Immediate level of fame or respect that you'll get in your community because now you're a part of this down and dirty gang and they respect you, and if anybody messes with you, the gang is backing you up. But that life is a very short-lived life, unfortunately.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, they're looking for protection.
Yeah.
They're looking for connection. The obviously they had a hard time with the language and new environment. So a lot of them made bad choices, and then as they're used. Yeah. By criminals.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an unfortunate, and it's interesting that we're on this topic because right now, as we're filming this, there's this big, it's Abrego Garcia is the talking point of the moment. And we have just today, 4 Democrats flew down to El Salvador.
It's crazy.
Yeah. and they were denied. They wanted to visit him. And they were denied that. I mean, what are your thoughts being from El Salvador, knowing the culture more deeply than I would say 99% of Americans who are just getting this information through their television, through mainstream media, are getting, I would say most of the information we get from mainstream media is disinformation. So you have to really parse through to get the truth. But having a first-person, knowledge of how El Salvador operates, how do you see this situation unfolding now?
Well, I think that the Congress people from the United States have no business traveling to El Salvador. I think that this guy must be like something very important for them to go. It's just that to me it doesn't make sense that they're like spending all this time and energy to trying to get someone that was deported because 1, the person was not supposed to be here. 2, he had a criminal record. Why is it's like an obsession to show that, we want to go save him and we want to bring him back. How can you bring back someone that was never supposed to be here? And that's what President Bukele said. Do you want me to smuggle him back
in? Yeah.
Which is like, hello, he smuggled in to get here.
Yeah.
Right. So the people from El Salvador, I think, one of the reasons that I was brought here by my mom, because during the time of, it was a war, when the Sandinistas wanted to take over everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we needed help, that, socialism or communism was coming, and in El Salvador needed help. And thank God it didn't become a socialist or communist country like
Cuba or other
Nicaragua,
places. Yeah.
Nicaragua and
yeah.
Honduras, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we start sending people back to El Salvador, MS-13 realizes that they can terrorize the people of El Salvador. And what they start saying is like, if you have a business, we'll protect your business, but you have to give me a monthly rent.
It's a racket, yeah.
So they start charging you for protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they saw that you were getting a lot of visitors from, the United States that were coming to see you, you were a target, because now they say you must have money. And that person who's coming to visit you a lot will give us a lot of money. So we'll try to say that we're going to kidnap one of your kids.
Yeah, and it's extortion.
And if you don't give us $5,000, we're going to kidnap that kid. So then the families will start, to gather so that they can send the money so that the MS-13 will not come and kidnap their child. Or a pretty girl. They want a pretty girl, and they say, we want to date her.
Mm-hmm.
And if the parents, don't allow it, they're going to be in trouble. Something could happen to that.
It's so sad because when you think about it, they're going after the most vulnerable.
Yes.
Whenever they're doing this, it's not people. I mean, I'm sure that they're rich people sometimes who get caught up in this, but rich people usually have the money for protection, or they have money to essentially prevent situations like this. Is usually the most vulnerable that you see this happen. It's the same thing in Brazil. It's the same thing in America too. I imagine that they target the most vulnerable, which is ironic that Democrats are standing up so strongly for this guy who, by the way, wasn't just accused of being MS-13 in an arrest record by an informant, but also had domestic violence as well as
human trafficking
allegations. So it's just the priorities are just so backwards. They want to get President Trump so bad that, to me, and I was just thinking about this, it's the equivalent of, when AOC went to the border wearing all white and she's like, does a photo op and she's like crying.
Yes.
They're doing the equivalent, but they're doing it in a foreign country with, a person who was set up for deportation. So it's ironic, and anyway, I feel like we talked enough about this.
It don't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
When was the last time your representative, I think it's Adam Schiff, right?
Adam Schiff, yes. Here,
okay.
Yeah.
When has Adam Schiff invited you for coffee, or
never,
or invite you to something? I mean, I feel like the Democrats that are going to El Salvador are putting everyone to shame because they're giving all this attention to someone that is not even a citizen or
exactly.
a person in their district. So if Adam Schiff is watching, I hope he invites you so you can let him know how he can better protect you from the homeless.
Yes, and there's Max Frost from Florida, who's from Florida. This guy is supposed to be from Maryland. And then there's one guy from California. I think his name is his last name is Garcia too.
He used to be the mayor, mayor of Long Beach.
That's him.
And then he was saying, "Oh, I also want to advocate for for his hairdresser or somebody who did makeup who is also in the jail."
They have their priorities are so backwards, but I don't see how anybody could, in good conscience, with common sense, keep voting Democrat, and that's why I think. They're pulling off these stunts and they're looking crazy, but I think long term that they're going to do real damage to their message, to their party, and real Americans who have common sense on their shoulders are going to see that and they're going to be like, I can't vote for that party.
Yeah.
They want to trans my kids. They're traveling across the world or the continent to go after somebody instead of taking care of, veterans here.
And when the president of El Salvador said, I am not going to return him. Do not ask. I'm not going to smuggle him back. Why is it that they don't hear that?
Yeah.
And do you remember years ago the story of the little boy, Elian Gonzalez?
Elian Gonzalez, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Didn't they come and remove him?
They forcibly removed. There's that very viral photo of there's it was an INS agent with a gun, and it's him and his uncle in a closet. It was crazy. It really was. It was a standoff for a minute too.
Yeah, they wanted to return this little boy back to a communist country because the dad, or I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like either the mom or the dad. I think it was the mom had traveled here with him because her family was here, and then she stayed here, but the dad was back in Cuba. The dad wanted.
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. No.
There's something big behind us.
No, I want to just shift topics real quick because you brought some amazing things that you want to share. I want to make sure we have enough time for that. So let's start out with the Doge audit, California. Can you explain that for us?
Well, I'm a delegate, so we did have our convention, and one of the things that I wanted to do was thank Elon Musk for all the work that he's been doing.
Yeah.
I didn't get paid for any of my work. It was all from the heart, being of service to our beautiful country and President Trump. And I understand his heart. He really wants to be of service.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad for him because he's like, why are these people like hating on me? I don't understand.
And they're not just hating on him; they're actively trying to destroy his company. It's a pretty cutting edge company. It represents everything that liberal values represent. It's green energy. It's efficient. It's bringing. Whenever there's a war, you just see there's always a headline. Elon Musk just sent I don't know how many Starlinks to Ukraine. He sent it to Ukraine. He sends it everywhere. So he really is doing so much, being so much of service and putting his own, financial stake in this situation. So I think it's really sad what happened to him. I think that honestly, in a few years, people are going to look at that with great shame. People who enabled that. It's going to be. I don't want to say it's going to be a stain in the country. It definitely is going to be a stain in the current state of politics and the Democrats because they enable that level of violence. They didn't disavow it, especially somebody. I mean, he's got nothing to gain. He's already the richest man in the world.
Yes.
So
so if Elon is watching us, you are a hero.
Yes.
Okay. And not only that, but you know what? He is a hero because he has Asperger's.
Yes,
I
heard that. Yeah,
and he's a visionary in the work that he's doing with his company and so many other stuff that he's done, and a lot of the we're talking about autism. We're talking about how it's our state and country is affected by that.
Yeah,
and he's a role model to many.
Yeah.
Okay, the Democrats are supposed to be all inclusive and let's love and let's help. I don't see that because being that he is thinking what's happening. His heart is hurt. Right?
He checks all the boxes when you think about it. He's an immigrant. He's neurodivergent.
Yes.
He owns a green business. He makes electric cars. He popularized electric cars beyond what people could ever understand. So. I mean, he checks all the boxes. It's just purely ideological.
I don't understand, and I'm just grateful that, at the convention, everybody was of his support. And I did the campaign because I wanted him to know that we love him and we are grateful and we want him to stop the steal. Because
I agree.
Just like, we don't believe in our elections here in California. We don't believe in all the money, we need protection.
Yeah.
Here in California, we need to protect the taxpayers. We're paying so much money for gas compared to other states.
Yeah, and didn't we just have another gas tax that just started earlier this year? It was like 50 cents, a 50-cent additional tax on top of all the other taxes that we have. And it's primarily because the state government is running such a huge deficit that they had to do that to overcome the deficit. And you look at some of it, $25 billion to homelessness in 5 years, and they can't tell you where all the money went.
No. We need to uncover the fraud. And that's what Elon Musk is doing, and that's why they hate him. That's why so many representatives hate him, especially in California, because we have gotten so much millions of dollars, and we still cannot help the homeless.
Yeah.
And, our insurance commissioner in California, he should be voted out. We are paying the highest insurance for our homes.
Yeah.
The insurance for medical, like some substance abuse and mental illness, they're robbing the companies. Because in California, we have treatment homes. I don't know if you know about treatment homes.
I'm not familiar with that part. I know the home insurance aspect, that they basically ran all the home insurers out of the state, and it's like almost impossible to get your home insured nowadays because of it. So you can only get it insured through the state, which is ironic, right? They destroy the market, and then you can only get it through us. So
monopoly.
Yeah, basically.
It's basically a monopoly, kind of like what they did with the healthcare. You know, that, you have to have mandatory healthcare. And if you don't have it, we'll provide it for you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Now, uncovering the fraud for the homelessness, we'll find out that a lot of the people that are on the streets did not get the support when they need it. Perhaps when they were ready to get the help, they went to substance abuse treatment homes, or they went for mental illness treatments. And what happens? They get insurance traffic. Just like human trafficking, they do insurance trafficking. They will try to get as much money as they can from the policy, from the insurance.
Interesting.
Then I have a life story. He's 29 years old. He said he went through it. He's the one that told me about the term insurance traffic. He's now 29. He's married, and he has a child. So he got out of homelessness, but he was a victim of the insurance traffic.
So that would basically mean he goes to the hospital, and they just charge him for everything to the max, so they can bleed out Medi-Cal or whatever is providing his insurance, bleed out the state or our tax money that we're using to pay.
Or private insurance. Okay, so let's say somebody says, and one thing is let's say somebody is a drug addict, or they're like an alcoholic, and one day they're like, I need the help. I want to stay out of drugs and alcohol. You got to get them like that. Okay? Because when a human says, I'm ready, it's an opportunity to save the human life. And let's say they go to the hospital. At the hospital, they send them to a treatment home. The treatment homes are all over California.
Yeah.
Some are more like in certain cities. It depends on the city. But the example I have is in Fountain Valley. The mayor of Fountain Valley, Ted Bowie, has been working with trying to get those treatment homes. It's a home in a neighborhood, and they have 4 rooms. They put a patient on each room. Then they offer them counseling over Zoom. Hello, somebody's just gonna go on Zoom and say, "Oh, I want to be sober." When a human is wanting to stay sober, or they want the help for mental illness, they need to be with other humans that are going through that.
Like AA style, where you're talking.
Therapists, psychologists. Those homes are basically fraud.
That's so interesting. And they're charging through the wazoo to basically have these people there and just do Zoom calls once a day or a couple times a week.
From where I hear, it's as long as you do 2 Zoom calls a day or 1 Zoom call a day, you can stay on the program. Wow. You have housing. We'll provide you with the housing.
And all that's getting charged, obviously.
Yeah.
So they're just checking a box.
probably charging $3,000 a day or $2,000 a day. It's like a big scam. So those are the things that we need to go to the insurance commissioner and talk about. And that's what Billy Asalee, who is our attorney general that was just appointed by President Trump, he is going to be finding out where all the money went. So I think soon they will find out that it is through the insurances that they are trying to take all the dollars that they can through Medicaid and through not really looking at the patient's root cause.
Yeah. Interesting. I see you have some more stuff you want to show, Maha.
Yeah.
That ties in.
So mental illness and substance abuse are we're a third world country.
Oh, I agree.
Okay. And that's how these people are able to take advantage.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have during COVID cause a lot of mental illness within our
Community.
Especially the youth. Okay, fentanyl deaths were on the rise because people were doing more drugs. As they do more drugs, it also affects the synthetic drugs that your kids are taking right now, causes psychosis. It can cause depression. It can cause bipolar. We're not looking at the effects of the opiates and the synthetics.
Yeah, we're only looking at the numbers. Oh, this many people died, but we're not looking at the people who aren't dying and now are having all these consequences.
So I've contacted RFK Jr. I have let him know about that. I've been working with a lot of parents that can provide testimonials so that we can provide solutions and we can stop, because China is sending all of those synthetics because they want to destroy America. It's a silent war.
Oh, yeah, I agree. They have so many different fronts that they're fighting. You know, it's not just, there's like the commercial front. There's like, they're trying to dissolve America's power from within, basically.
Yes.
You know, and they have great allies in the Democrats. Anyway, all that being said, I do want to talk about something that you are part of that's really cool. You went to Trump's inauguration.
Yes.
And you have a memento of history here, which is the invitation.
Yeah, with a beautiful red envelope and the emblem, you know. So it was a great gift to be there.
Yeah.
And I was also at the election party. But the inauguration was special because, you know, you see all of your work. And you're like, okay, finally, President Trump is sworn in.
Yeah.
And I was able to go to a cabinet reception with all the cabinet members. I had met many of them previously at the spring retreat that we had. The spring retreat was basically everybody who wanted to be the VP was there.
Yeah.
So I got to meet J.D. Vance. I got to meet Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, Lee Selden. I mean, they were just like accessible.
So this was before Vance got the nom. That's crazy.
Yeah. So the story is that J.D. Vance was picked President Trump changed his mind 30 minutes before
picking him. I think J.D. Vance was a great choice.
I do too.
Yeah.
I really think that he represents, you know, a younger generation. Also, like myself, like when I talked to him one time, I said, I was also raised by my grandmother.
Yeah.
Because, you know, your first 5 or 8 years.
It's formative years.
Yeah. You know, they do have a impact on you. So the fact that he came from Ohio, you know, from an area that is very poor, an area that is infested with drugs and crime and poverty.
And he had it in his family. His mom, battled with it. Yeah.
Addiction, you know, and that is a very difficult.
It's very difficult to overcome.
Yeah.
And as a child, to also see your parent go through something like that, I think is it's something that really shapes the way you see the world. Like you said, it's your formative years. I admire him a lot because he served our country, which is something a lot of people my age have opted out of doing. And Gen Z is even worse, right? So it's like slowly getting worse and worse. But so he served our country, and not only that, this is a guy with all of his adversity. He's super bright. And that debate that he had with Tim Walz just showed, to me, it showed that he also, he's very presidential. He could very easily, I don't know. The rumors are Trump's going to run for a third term. I don't know if he's going to run or not, whatever happens. But I think that Republicans are covered with JD regardless of what happens, because he's such a good, a good, intelligent man of faith too.
And he speaks very well.
Yeah.
He is quick to respond and quick to point the weakness of whoever he's debating.
Exactly.
So I don't think that we're going to have a problem in finding that, whoever's going to be taking the torch. I think we have so much talent. I think that President Trump, picked people with diverse backgrounds and people that love their country. And they would say, oh, he's such a terrible person and he's divisive and blah, blah, blah. And you look at his cabinet, they all come.
Yeah, from different backgrounds in different places, yeah.
And that's the beauty, you know, that Tulsi, was running also, and he went and pulled her in. The same thing with RFK Jr.
Yeah.
It shows unity. It's no longer, to me, it's no longer really like Republican and Democrats. President Trump is common sense.
Yeah.
And MAGA is common sense.
That is a terrific point to end. Unfortunately, we have to end it because it's a little late. And Evelyn, I don't want to keep her here too late, but this was terrific. This is so good. I think it's you provide great insight on how people who are passionate about changing the country and making it better, how they can contribute and how they can stay engaged. And even in a state so deep blue as California, and that's been run amok because of one party rule, one party Democrat rule, to have faith that we can change this state really says a lot about you, and it says a lot about what we can do in this state. And that's why I have hope, because I think that with people who have that amount of faith, I think that we can truly turn this around.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for...
Cheers. And this is my last thing. President Trump had his own Coke at the inauguration.
Yes.
And, it's like a keepsake. But I can tell everyone that I am not a Diet Coke drinker, but this Diet Coke tastes like victory. Yeah. It was amazing.
Well, that's terrific. Evelyn, how can people find you? Tell them in the camera, look in the camera, and tell people where they can find you on Instagram or whatever social media.
I am in Facebook, Evelyn Sky Jones, and I am in X and Truth Social, Truth Social under Sky Patriot.
Well, thank you so much, Evelyn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.